I didn't think one careless comment could shatter my perfect world. But that night at the gala, when I mocked Tom in front of everyone, I set off a chain reaction I couldn't undo. The chandeliers cast glittering light across the room as I swirled my champagne flute, basking in the glow of admiration from our friends. Dressed in a gown that screamed couture, I felt untouchable until I opened my mouth and ruined everything. Tom's latest project? Oh, darling, it's quaint, I said with a laugh, waving a hand dismissively. All those tiny model buildings. He might as well be playing with Legos. My friends chuckled politely, but the silence that followed was deafening. I glanced at Tom, expecting him to roll his eyes or offer one of his self-deprecating smiles. Instead, he stood frozen, his jaw tight, his eyes piercing through me like shards of glass. For the first time, I saw something in him I'd never noticed before. Anger. Real, raw anger. He forced a smile for the crowd, but when he turned away, I knew I'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. That moment lingered long after the laughter faded, marking not just an end to the evening, but the beginning of the unraveling of us. To the outside world, we were the epitome of perfection. Tom and Sarah, the golden couple. Our home was immaculate, our social calendar packed with events that screamed success. But behind closed doors, the cracks had been forming for years, hidden beneath layers of designer clothes and expensive decor. I'd always thought Tom's work as an architect was fine, functional, but hardly glamorous. It didn't fit into my vision of a life filled with prestige and admiration. He spent his days sketching blueprints for buildings no one would notice, while I flitted between galas and charity luncheons, basking in the glow of attention. But Tom, he never seemed to care about any of it. Not the parties, not the designer handbags, not even the way people fawned over me. Instead, he came home every night with tired eyes and quiet frustration, talking about projects I barely understood or clients who didn't appreciate his vision. It's just a job, I'd say dismissively when he tried to share his passion. To me, it was just a job, something he did to keep our lifestyle afloat. What I didn't see, or maybe chose not to, was how much it meant to him. How much he meant to himself beyond the role of my husband. And then there was Emma. At first, she was just another name on Tom's list of colleagues, someone he mentioned occasionally in passing. But over time, her presence grew more frequent in his stories. She admired his talent, encouraged his creativity, and actually listened when he talked about his dreams. The way he lit up when he spoke about her made my stomach churn, not out of jealousy, not at first, but because it highlighted everything missing between us. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. Tom wouldn't leave. He couldn't. After all, he owed me this life, the house, the security, the status. Without me, where would he be? Just another struggling architect chasing pipe dreams. So I ignored the growing distance, the way he lingered on phone calls with Emma or stayed late at the office more often than usual. I convinced myself that whatever was happening was temporary, that things would go back to normal once he got over whatever phase he was in. What I didn't realize, what I refused to see, was that the foundation of our marriage had already crumbled, and Emma wasn't the cause. She was just the spark that illuminated how far apart we'd truly grown. The morning after the gala, the house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that felt heavy with unspoken tension. I sipped my coffee in the kitchen, still wearing last night's gown, when Tom walked in. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, those piercing, hurt eyes, cut straight through me. "We need to talk," he said, his voice calm but firm. My stomach tightened. "About what?" I asked lightly, trying to play it off as if nothing had happened. "Don't pretend you don't know," he shot back, slamming a hand on the counter. The sound startled me, and for the first time, I saw anger in him, not just frustration or resignation, but real anger. What you said last night, Sarah, it wasn't just thoughtless. It was cruel. My cheeks burned, but I forced a laugh. Cruel? You're being overdramatic, Tom. It was a joke. People make jokes all the time. No, he interrupted, his tone icy now. Not like that. Not about something I've poured my heart into. And not in front of everyone we know. He paused, running a hand through his hair. I'm done, Sarah. I can't keep doing this. Not with you. My breath caught. Doing what? What are you talking about? I'm filing for divorce, he said flatly. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. Divorce? That wasn't part of the plan. We were supposed to stay together, forever. He owed me that much, didn't he? You can't be serious, I spat, panic rising in my throat. You'd throw away everything because of one stupid comment. It's not just one comment, he said, shaking his head. It's years of feeling invisible, unappreciated. Like nothing I do is ever enough for you. That's ridiculous. I snapped, my voice shrill now. And what about me? You're abandoning me. Do you even realize what this will do to me? To us. He laughed bitterly. To you? Sarah, you wouldn't even notice if I disappeared tomorrow. You've built your whole life around appearances, not people. But here's the thing, I've already taken steps to protect myself. Our accounts are frozen, and I've hired a lawyer. His words left me reeling. Frozen accounts? A lawyer? How could he have done all this without me noticing? As he turned to leave, the reality crashed over me. I might actually lose everything, the house, the money, the life I'd worked so hard to maintain. Tom, wait. I called after him, my voice trembling. But he didn't stop. He walked out the door, leaving me standing there, clutching my coffee mug like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. The weeks after Tom left felt like a free fall, each day pulling me further from the life I'd known. Without access to our joint accounts, my savings dwindled alarmingly fast. I told myself it didn't matter, that I could still keep up appearances, but the truth was impossible to ignore. My credit cards were maxed out, and the bills piled up on the kitchen counter like a ticking clock counting down to disaster. Still, I couldn't stop spending. A new handbag here, a spa treatment there. It was as if I believed throwing money at the emptiness inside me might fill it, even for just a moment. But no amount of luxury could mask the growing distance between me and my so-called friends. They stopped calling, stopped inviting me to lunches or charity events. At first, I convinced myself they were busy, but deep down, I knew better. They could smell failure, like sharks scenting blood in the water. One by one, they drifted away, leaving me alone in the sprawling mansion that now felt more like a prison than a home. The silence in the house was deafening. Without Tom's quiet presence, or even his frustration, to anchor me, I found myself adrift in memories I'd long buried. I used to dream of being an artist once, didn't I? Before Tom, before all this wealth and status, I'd spent hours painting, losing myself in colors and shapes that seemed to speak louder than words ever could. But somewhere along the way, I'd traded brushes for Birkins, creativity for couture. Why? Because it was easier? Or because I thought privilege would make me happy? Now, sitting alone in the cavernous living room, surrounded by things I suddenly realized meant nothing, I questioned everything. Did I ever truly love Tom? Or had I only loved what he gave me? The security, the lifestyle, the validation? He'd been steady and kind, always working tirelessly to provide for us, while I dismissed his efforts as ordinary, uninspired. The weight of my own selfishness pressed down on me, suffocating and relentless. For the first time in years, I wondered who I really was beneath the designer dresses and perfectly coiffed hair. And more terrifyingly, I wondered if it was too late to find out. desperate to reclaim the life I'd lost. I threw myself into a campaign to win Tom back. I sent him handwritten letters filled with apologies, staged tearful phone calls dredging up memories of our early years together, and even showed up unannounced at his office with flowers. "We can fix this," I pleaded one evening, my voice trembling as I stood in his doorway. "I made mistakes, but we have something worth saving." Tom listened silently, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his words were firm. "Sarah, it's over. You had your chance." Then came the blow I wasn't prepared for. Emma. She appeared beside him during a mutual friend's party. A soft smile on her face, her arm linked casually through his. The sight hit me like a punch to the gut. "Emma's been helping me see things more clearly," Tom said, almost gently. "Things I should have seen years ago." His tone was calm, but the message was clear. His future wasn't with me anymore. Humiliation burned hot in my chest, quickly morphing into rage. How dare she waltz into my life and take what was mine? In my desperation, I crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I started whispering lies about Emma, subtle at first, then bolder. Rumors about her being manipulative, opportunistic, desperate. Each word felt bitter on my tongue, but I told myself it was justified. If she disappeared, maybe Tom would come back. But when Tom found out, and he inevitably did, the look in his eyes shattered whatever hope I still clung to. "You're unbelievable," he said, his voice cold and steady. "This is who you really are, Sarah. Selfish and destructive." He didn't yell or slam doors. Instead, he walked away quietly, leaving me standing alone in the ruins of my own making. That night, as I sat surrounded by empty champagne bottles and designer gowns that suddenly seemed meaningless, the weight of what I'd done crashed over me. I hadn't just ruined Tom's trust. I destroyed pieces of myself in the process. For the first time, I saw how far I'd fallen, not because of losing him, but because of who I'd become while trying to keep him. With no other options left, I put the mansion on the market, a decision that felt like ripping off a bandage from a wound that hadn't fully healed. Selling it was both a relief and a humiliation. The sprawling estate had been my trophy, my proof of success, but now it loomed over me as a symbol of everything I'd lost. When the sale went through, I moved into a modest apartment downtown, its cramped rooms a stark contrast to the opulence I was used to. For the first time in years, I had to budget, to think about groceries, utility bills, and whether I could afford an extra cup of coffee without dipping into next week's rent. Desperation led me to take odd jobs just to get by. I started working at a local cafe, slinging lattes and wiping down tables for minimum wage, a far cry from charity galas and designer gowns. At first, I hated every second of it. The way customers snapped their fingers at me, the ache in my feet after hours of standing, the sheer mundanity of it all. But slowly, something shifted. I began noticing the people around me. The single mother juggling 2 jobs while raising her kids, the elderly man who came in daily with stories of his late wife, the college student working nights to pay tuition. Their struggles dwarfed mine, yet they faced life with resilience I couldn't have imagined before. It humbled me in ways nothing else ever had. As months passed, I found myself changing, not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. Old friends I'd neglected during my socialite days reached out, surprised to hear I was back in touch with reality. As one of them put it, they weren't the kind of people who cared about labels or appearances. They simply liked me for who I was beneath the polished veneer. With them, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. Then there was painting. One day, rummaging through boxes I hadn't unpacked since moving, I stumbled upon an old sketchbook filled with drawings I'd abandoned long ago. Something stirred inside me, a flicker of the passion I once had. Tentatively, I picked up a brush again, letting colors spill onto canvas like emotions I didn't know how to voice. Painting became my escape, my therapy, my way of rediscovering pieces of myself I thought were gone forever. Eventually, I started volunteering at a community center, teaching art classes to underprivileged kids. Watching their faces light up when they created something beautiful reminded me of what truly mattered, not wealth or status, but connection, creativity, and purpose. Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild my life, not the one I'd clung to out of fear, but one built on authenticity and meaning. For the first time in years, I felt enough. 1 year later, the envelope arrived in the mail, a simple white card with elegant gold lettering, Tom and Emma's wedding. My stomach tightened as I held it, running my fingers over the embossed names. For a moment, I considered tossing it aside, pretending I'd never received it. But deep down, I knew I couldn't avoid this, not anymore. The day of the wedding was bright and crisp, sunlight streaming through the trees as guests gathered on the lawn. I dressed carefully, choosing something understated yet meaningful, a soft blue dress that felt more me than any designer gown ever had. As I walked toward the venue, my heart pounded with a mix of nerves and resolve. This wasn't about bitterness or regret, it was about closure, for both of us. After the ceremony, I found Tom standing near the edge of the garden, his tuxedo slightly rumpled from the day's festivities. He looked happy, truly happy, in a way I hadn't seen him in years. When he noticed me approaching, his expression softened, though there was still a flicker of caution in his eyes. "Sarah," he said, his tone measured but not unkind. "I didn't think you'd come." "I almost didn't," I admitted, offering a small smile. "But I wanted to say something, to thank you, actually." His brow furrowed slightly, and I took a deep breath before continuing. "You helped me see who I really was, the person I didn't want to admit I'd become. And while I'll always regret how things ended between us, I'm grateful for what came after. You gave me a chance to start over, even if it wasn't with you." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Tom nodded slowly, his gaze steady. "I hope you found some peace, Sarah. That's all I ever wanted, for both of us." "There's no going back," I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. "But maybe we can let go of the rest." He smiled faintly, and though there was no trace of the love we once shared, there was understanding, an acknowledgement of the pain and growth that had shaped us both. We exchanged a few more words before parting ways, each returning to our separate lives. As I left the venue, the cool evening air brushing against my skin, I felt something I hadn't known in years: peace. Redemption doesn't erase mistakes, it doesn't rewrite history or undo hurt, but it offers something far greater: hope. Hope for a future defined not by wealth or status, but by authenticity, growth, and the courage to be truly, unapologetically myself. The weight of my choices pressed on me long after the dust had settled. How do you face the wreckage of your own making without letting shame drown you? I'd spent years chasing a life that looked perfect on the outside but left me hollow within. It wasn't until everything crumbled, my marriage, my social standing, my sense of self, that I began to see what truly mattered. But was this clarity born from hitting rock bottom, or had it taken conscious effort to confront the person I'd become? Redemption didn't come easily. Every step forward felt like wading through quicksand, each misstep threatening to pull me back under. Yet, in those moments of vulnerability, I found pieces of myself I thought were lost: creativity, kindness, authenticity. These weren't things money could buy or status could validate. They came from within. What defines a meaningful life? Is it the accolades, the designer labels, the envy of others? Or is it something quieter, deeper, the relationships we nurture, the passions we pursue, the person we strive to be when no one's watching. For so long, I equated worth with external success. Now, stripped of all that, I'm learning that fulfillment comes not from what you have, but who you are and who you choose to become.